Welcome back to Spangled Gamblers. I'm your host, King Dog. I'm here with my right-hand ride or die, Pratik. PJ, you want to say hi?
Hey.
Hey. A month or two ago, we said we were going to start doing 2 podcasts a week so we could get some really awesome guests on. And today we've got the political gambler. That's Monty from the UK. You want to holler at the boys?
Hi. Hello, guys.
You've probably seen that face in your Twitter feed if you bet on politics. Anyway, Monty's one of the OG, actually, you're probably like the OG political gambler. He reports on markets for Betfair, which is a way bigger gambling exchange than anything we have in the USA. And if you're on the team that is concerned about American leadership slipping in the world, the fact that Monty is like probably the biggest and most trusted person in this space should give you extreme concern. How do you feel about being the global superpower?
I love it. I deserve it. It's my mission in life to reach this point.
Do you sing like Hail Britannia, rule the waves, never shall
Never.
Political bettors never be slaves? That's how the words go.
I don't know the words.
Really? They would teach
Rule
us that.
Britannia, rule. We don't do that stuff in Britain, really. A lot of people are not very much into the national songs. Rule Britannia, Britannia, rule the waves, Britain, Britain never shall be slaves. After that, I'm lost.
It's a very direct lyric, is it not? You know, like, what, bitch, we're not going to be slaves.
Yeah, well, that used to be the rule of things, didn't it? A long
Yeah.
time ago, before any of us were born.
That's right. And then they invented democracy for us to bet on because the outcome of we either have all of your women as slaves or you die was not really a good political outcome. So I'm glad we're not betting on that. So let the boys, we're in the USA. I'm in Hollywood. Pratik seems to be like a roving vagabond in the northeastern Atlantic basin. But let's get everyone woke to who you are, Monty. So you're one of, if not maybe like the first professional political gambler. I know you gamble on a lot of stuff other ways, but like, you're a smart guy. What was that conversation like in the living room with your parents? Were they like hoping you were going to be like a doctor and you dropped out of medical school to bet on horses and politicians?
It's worse than that, really. When I was about 13, I discovered a football coupon, right? And you know that you could bet on all the results in Britain. And I just literally went home and said, right, get me some of these. I've got to get some coupons out of the nearest betting shop. And I started studying football coupons. And so within about 24 hours, 48 hours, I had decided that when I was 16, I would leave school, or 18, and go and work as a bookie, which absolutely nobody thought was a good idea whatsoever. But turned out all right.
Well, tell me this, though. So one of the things that's really awesome about it being September 2020 in the USA is there's lots of huge Trump fans coming in and betting. And that's because, well, like, one, it creates market opportunities, but 2, it means that bettors in the US political space are way more badass because, like, you know, they're like chewing their tobacco and ripping beers instead of building complex financial models. So I want to get into that with you, though. Because there's like, when you see a trend like that pop up in the market, like let's get brainy, because this is like a way to make money right now. I was going to ask you some other bogus questions about betting in the UK or whatever, but like, fuck it, let's go. Like, let's play our game. Would you rather? So what's your strategy about this? Because you could either follow that money and take a quick profit, right? Like if there's lots of money piling on Trump, you can follow that and get out before the top, I guess. Or would you rather just take this opportunity to just build positions on Biden's side for a discount? I mean, like, what's the smart play here?
Oh, I mean, I think in the past, I would have done the former. In normal circumstances, just follow the gamble down because it means something. And generally, you know why it's happening anyway.
Wait. What does that mean? Follow the gamble down?
Follow the money. Follow as the odds shorten, as the odds go down, just follow it, you know, knowing, as you say, you're going to get out slightly shorter. The only thing I'd say is nothing's rational about this election. Like the betting is not rational. The sizes. So I could just see that being a burst where people were so pumped during the convention and the messaging that came out of it and the riots and last night a slight poll bounce. But then if Marist or Washington Post publish 12% ahead tomorrow, does it go back? Because really, by rights, the market should be about 1.6, 1.7 at best.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, like how would you respond to the counter argument that basically says, look, the conventional wisdom got it totally wrong in 2016. People aren't really paying attention right now. Biden's a weak candidate, and by the way, American cities are burning, and people want a law and order candidate.
Okay, so you've got to separate all of those issues because they're all different. The 2016 argument, I think, is a weak one, because it's a totally different election on many, many fronts. There isn't going to be a strong third party, so Trump's going to need a lot more votes. Turnout's likely to rise if the midterms are an example. Biden is more further ahead than Clinton consistently over a long period. There are numerous reasons to suggest, plus Biden isn't Clinton. I mean, Biden isn't under FBI investigation and hasn't had a 25-year, smear campaign against them and done a lot to justify that smear campaign along the way, right?
Yeah.
It was very easy to attack Hillary Clinton for the mud to stick because she was a person who people didn't trust in the first place. Right? Joe Biden isn't that person. But where you do raise a good point, and you have to factor in, is the violence. I do think that plays to Republicans, there's no doubt about it. And more the point, it plays to them in those critical places in Wisconsin.
So what, pretend that you're riding around in a limousine right now with Joe Biden. It seems like he's in a really sticky position because he hasn't really weighed in a noticeable way about the violence surrounding all these protests and stuff. Like, what is the right thing for him to do right now? To draw a contrast with the demonstrations the way Trump has, or to just hang back like he has? Or I don't really know what the right move for him is.
I think that hanging back works during the summer. I think he might be doing it tomorrow. They say he's going out campaigning tomorrow, so perhaps it's Wisconsin. He should go there before Trump goes there on Tuesday and do the unity thing, do the grieving thing.
Yeah.
And for I will bring people together. I'm the candidate who can bring the races together and bring normality back, right? And then a day later, Trump's going to go there and presumably that would be a good contrast. But staying quiet doesn't do anything; it just makes you look weak.
I tend to agree, but there seems to be a lot of argument in this country about whether or not people. It just seems like there's a lot of wishful thinking in the betting on this election, and a lot of wishful thinking in the discussion on the election. And here's something I've been wondering, which is: has there ever been two candidates that voters knew more about going into the election? Like, I feel like there's not a lot of mystery surrounding Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So I also wonder how much it matters, what happens between now and then.
I agree. Look, the last A+ poll that I looked at had 7% of persuadable voters supporting Biden and 6% persuadable voters supporting Trump. So it's a very small number. And, we know, of course, that most of those persuadables aren't really persuadable, right? So it's a small number. I do think that Biden is slightly different in that, he's well known to us in politics. I think to the average American, he's just a politician, just another politician. And that means that he could be defined by other people, which is why he's got to get out there, because Trump's defining him right now as something that he isn't.
So let me go back in time. Let me put you in the time machine here. I saw that you were skeptical of some things that we were skeptical of too. So maybe we can all just sort of cry together for a second. We were pretty adamant that we didn't think Kamala Harris was going to be the right VP pick for him. And you were sort of skeptical of Trump in 2016, whether he'd make the Republican ticket, right? Like the rest of sane people, So,
and at one point, tested convention was 80%. That's the missed opportunity. That trade. Why didn't I go the other way? It just killed me forever that I didn't do that, because I could have. Yeah. Never mind.
That was a great trade this year too.
Kasich, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird because I feel like, Pratik, I feel like I'm monopolizing this conversation. So feel free to throw some elbows and hit me in my grill. But here's the constant tension while I've got a smart guy like you on the line that I have, which is I feel like all these Nate Silver poll people and super data election predictor picker, whatever the hell we're calling them, they're really good at weighing the risk of kind of short-term trends, but I feel like they really miss on sort of big kind of cultural things that can, I guess the Nassim Taleb quote would be a black swan. And I don't really know how to weight that risk. Like, I just feel like whatever mood I'm in on a given day, I'm like, well, these polls are useful or they're not useful. And then sometimes I make money and sometimes I don't. But like, do you account for that in a disciplined way?
I wouldn't say it's disciplined. I'd say that everything that I do in gambling, whether politics or sport, and we've done it since I was a kid, it's very instinctive. I will price it up there and then. I don't like what the Nate Silver thing at all. I'm not saying Nate Silver isn't any good. I don't know how to price a black swan, but I do think, as traders, it's always worth keeping an eye on them because people fall for the conspiracies. We talk about black swan. So, what's the bet right now? What's the best bet outside the main horse race at the moment? I think back in the VPs. Back in 400 to 1, 0.25% pence, there will be, in the next 2 months, some crazy conspiracy theory that Biden's dead, that Trump's going to quit the next day, and one of them will come in. One of them will move up to 4, 5, 6%, just like 2016.
Pratik, you sort of pioneered that trade. I feel like that should be named after you.
Yeah. Well, I was advocating the 1 cent shares on anyone plausible in the VP market to buy for president. I think it's actually too high right now. I don't know that I'd pay 4 cents on Kamala Harris to be president.
Is that what you've got to pay? 4?
It's 4 currently cents? At 4. Yeah, I think it is something like that, 3 or 4. So if you had gotten in at 1, that was a nice profit. But I think at this point it may be too high to get into. I think actually on that front, I'd be curious if you agree, but I think getting Mike Pence at 1 cent to be president may not be a bad deal. Just between now and the election, like you said, any rumor that Trump might quit or, I don't know, the tax return comes out. I mean, who knows? Anything could push that one up to 2 cents.
Look, I think it's a fantastic bet. I think it's the bet of the lot because, firstly, on Betfair, that is 0.25%, 0.25 cents pence. So it's got to do nothing to improve. I know none of the books have hurt Trump, but this stuff is dynamite. This is mafia.
Well, you get people betting their feelings off it too.
Absolutely. I think
this is the one that's going to get them. But it's not.
Yeah, I think it will make a lot of headlines, and it will get, the Cohen revelations and the Cohen interviews will be.
Well, and we'll have Zoltar on soon, and he'll talk about his conspiracy theory about Trump resigning so that Pence can pardon him or something like that.
I agree. I've written about this. I totally agree. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's, let's look ahead, right? Let's say that in 1 month, Biden is 12% ahead or 10% ahead. Internal Republican polls are showing they're being slaughtered in Michigan and Wisconsin. All of that. They're staring at it. Firstly, I don't think he's the sort of person who particularly would want to carry on in that situation, be humiliated. But what if at the same time there have been developments in these various Southern Districts of New York cases or the tax return? I mean, I'm still astonished that the Senate Intelligence Committee report hasn't made any impact. So there's enough material.
I think that the United States of America is pretty immune at this point to. I'm going to say something that's going to get people to cancel me. I think that there's been a little bit of crying wolf that's been going on. Like, it's not really hard to find things that Donald Trump has done that like Americans shouldn't tolerate from a president, but the fixation on him with some weird conspiracy theory with the post office or being a Russian spy is just like why'd you pick those? There's things that are a lot easier to demonstrate to people than those things. So I feel like we're just immune to it.
I appreciate that. No, you're right, and they don't cut through, but they're true. I mean, go back to 2016. I was writing about Russia 4 months before he got elected, and I thought it would kill him. I thought when you get on the campaign trail with this stuff and Paul Manafort's links to Putin are exposed, that's that, right? It's all done. And she did raise it repeatedly, Clinton. But when you watched the worm, the worm polling they do during...
Oh, yeah, Are they interested? Are they
interested or not? Every time she mentioned Russia, it fell through the floor.
Yeah.
People just don't want to hear that.
Do you think what do you think Trump's floor is? I mean, how low do you think he can go in a worst case scenario?
I'm going to say 41, 42. I mean, so one of the interesting dynamics, I think, that could completely blindside a lot of the polls in the markets is the turnout. I don't know what you guys think about this. I
don't think about it.
Well, look at so let's consider the midterms. Went from 36% to 50% in 4 years. Right? Yeah. It's a general election turnout almost at the midterms. So now, were the turnout to rise by not that level of increase, but let's say it rose by 8% to 63, 64%. In that situation, most of those new voters are going to be Biden voters, right? And Trump could undershoot the polls in that situation.
What is the why would they be Biden voters? Is just because Trump voters are old and they're like dead now?
Judging by the midterms, the evidence in the midterms was and all the special elections, they've energized. Trump has energized a particular segments against.
Or like the Democratic primary turnouts were all like, even when the coronavirus was going on, I was losing money because I was betting that turnout would drop in some of these states, and people were still lining up to vote. To vote against Trump and get the Ronies.
The thing I'm trying to weigh, and right now I'm basically betting pretty aggressively on Democrats wherever I can. I'm even taking some long shot positions, not only in places like Texas and Georgia and so forth, but even places like Tennessee, Kentucky. I'm trying to get in at 4% on the Democrats.
Really?
I mean, not because I think those are going to pay,
because it will try.
I think But the big concern or maybe question I have is, I think one of the gaps or areas where I think that gamblers tend to fall short is that they don't pay attention to the skill of the individual politician. And I think in retrospect, one of the areas where the reasons why I lost on Hillary Clinton in 2016 is I basically took for granted that, number one, Trump didn't really have a good operation, which turned out to be true. But I also calculated that Hillary was basically running a competent campaign. I mean, I remain baffled that they didn't invest the right way in places like Wisconsin, Michigan, and were trying to run up margins in places that they didn't need to win. I mean, that just seems like such an unforgivable error. And the question to me is, I don't have a good read on Biden's skill as a politician. I mean, on the one hand, he got elected to Congress at age 25, Senate at age 30. I mean, things like that don't happen by accident. On the other hand, you look at all of his previous presidential races. I mean, total disaster. He very nearly blew a lead in the primary.
It's easy for that to happen by accident in Delaware, though. I mean, you can just go shake hands for like 3 straight weekends and you've met half the state. That's different from getting elected to Senate in California or Illinois or something.
Yeah. So I guess the point is, I mean, I think a skilled politician in the situation Biden is now could really run up the margin and win a landslide election. On the other hand, one could totally see him having an underwhelming debate performance, et cetera, and having this election be closer than it should be.
Well, I agree with those doubts, absolutely, about Joe Biden. I'm no great advocate for Biden. I think in this particular time, he's probably the right choice because he doesn't alienate people. He's vanilla, and therefore he's good for the defecting Republicans and independents. But I agree, he's totally unproven on the campaign trail. And I totally agree about Clinton's hopeless campaign and like the Democrats' general ability to screw such situations up. But what I would say is I haven't changed my analysis since like November 2016. First of all, forget any other election and other countries. Trump is different. Trump engages everybody like nobody else. It's all about him, right? And if you look at the elections that have happened since 2016 and the polls, what it does suggest is what I thought was going to happen in 2016 and didn't happen, which was that the Trump's approval ratings are really the key number, and the people who are against never come over. They never come back. And as long as those people go out and vote to stop Trump, they will stop him. But unfortunately, in 2016, they didn't. They didn't turn out, or a lot of them voted for Jill Stein or whoever.
Gary Johnson.
Gary Johnson, right? And that I don't think is going to happen this time. So I think that Biden sort of can't be any worse than Clinton was as a candidate.
Well, here's my criticism of Biden, and this is like, I'll throw like a little gasoline on the fire because someone has to do that for this podcast today. I think that a mistake that Democratic campaigns make a lot is that they're so used to people like just taking what they say at face value and agreeing with them. They go on the news. Everyone interviewing on the news is like, oh my God, I agree. Like they're just not used to having to argue and prove their side. And then sometimes they just never get around to doing it. They just say some nasty things about the person they're running against. And all of a sudden Donald Trump's the president because no one ever bothered to like explain why they would be a good person to run for president. So to me, like maybe that's the good side of having Kamala Harris on the ticket is that she's a total war dog and like she's gonna show her teeth and make a case that maybe Joe Biden's a little too soft to make. I don't know the answer to that, but I do think it's a consistent error that campaigns, like Biden's have made and will make again on the Democratic side.
I think they're quite soft as well, Democrat primaries. No one, people make a big deal about Harris having a go at Biden early on and Julian Castro. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? You're road testing. I mean, compare that to the thing Trump won in 2016.
Yeah.
Where they were threatening to kill each other every debate. It was absolutely brutal. But, that to me is Trump's great achievement that he could win a primary like that and that's why you probably shouldn't write him off.
Well, I don't like the phrase, like what's the phrase that you hear on CNN from Anderson Cooper that's like Democrats need to fall in love and Republicans need to fall in line. You can tell me if you agree with this, but my old Republican political hack friends always say that it's way easier to build a coalition for Republicans because all you have to decide on is how much you want to cut taxes by, and no one really gives a shit about the rest of the issues. Whereas, for Democratic politics, it can be much more complicated than that, between all the different factions and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I would say that has reversed to a large extent. And I think a big reason for that is I guess I don't know what to make of the how low Trump can go. And one of the reasons, maybe what gives me pause, is that the thing that Trump has tapped into is the country's racial anxieties in a way that I think weren't really here even 8 years ago. And you could actually see a semblance of this even when Mitt Romney ran, where even though he lost and lost fairly comfortably, he performed pretty well with the white vote. And I think a lot of those anxieties have not only linger, but in many ways could get worse with the protests and so forth. Of course, the flip side of that is that minority turnout may be a factor for Trump this time in a way it hasn't been for Republican candidates.
Which way are you taking that? Are you taking it that his campaign's line that he'll actually win minority votes, or the other side that minorities will turn out in bigger numbers for Biden?
I think that it probably means that it'll be harder for Biden to win a landslide election in the way that we used to see in the 80s or 90s. At the same time, I think that Biden is not going to have the same kind of problems that with minority votes that Hillary did. I think we'll probably see the black vote closer to Obama territory. That would be my... Do you basically agree with that?
Totally agree.
Yeah.
You could see it throughout this 4-year term. You saw it when Doug Jones won Alabama.
Yeah.
There is minority turnout's going to fall. And again, I think it will carry Arizona.
So how I mean, at the state level, then, if you're in agreement that Biden is on track for a comfortable win, what are like the states at the outer edges that you're ready to bet on the Democrats?
Thinking about the odds, on predicted odds, I like Ohio at 33%. I don't think that's out of the question at all. That's a toss-up.
That's a spicy take. A lot of people are saying the opposite.
Biden's a Rust Belt guy.
Yeah.
Right? He's not Hillary Clinton. And the polls there make it more or less level. Biden's been in front of the country. I think you add these extra potential differential turnout effects, then he could win it. That's on the outer edge. Like I say, that's on the outer edge. To me, I'm very confident. The reason I'm very confident Biden will win is that I definitely think he will win Michigan.
That's like, I feel like that takes some like brass cojones to buy a 33-cent yes on Biden in Ohio, given all the easy money that there is to be made. Like, are you going to hold that until the end, or are you going to sell it when it moves?
Oh, probably sell it back. Yeah, I mean, I just think that that's a state that shouldn't be taken out of the toss-up column, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, to me, the longer shots are Georgia and Texas. And if you wanted a real long shot, I'd probably go Alaska.
Oh.
But really long shot, I mean, I'd want big odds, right? I think it's 14 cents on Betfair prices. I'd want bigger than that. I'd want 8 to 10.
I'm actually also buying Biden in Ohio. I think 33% is way too low. I expect that to be at least in the 40s going on the eve of the election. We got a question on Ohio in the mailbag that maybe is worth engaging from Rahul. He asked, do you think Kasich backing Biden will swing Ohio significantly? He's a pretty big name in the state. So I suppose, I mean, there are two questions there. One is the Kasich factor, but then I wanted to get your thoughts more generally on Republican support for Biden. It seems to be coming primarily from establishment Republicans, but how much of a factor, if at all, do you think that will be in the election?
I think it is a factor. I think it's a very, very important factor because, as we discussed earlier, there's so few persuadables, right? That's the story. And I mean, forget the specific Trump era. This goes back. I mean, in 2012, there weren't many persuadables. Someone like Kasich was a popular governor. He beat Trump in the primary in that state. When you look at the way his primary voters, for example, broke down in 2016, half of them voted for Trump. If he just carries that small percentage, he could take a 20th, it could take 5%, 10% off of Trump's vote, and that's a term.
I mean, I'm assuming that the other half of those are the people in the suburbs of Dallas and Orange County that voted for Democrats in the House race. But I tend to, I mean, I kind of want to take the other side of that, though, because I don't think anyone really cares what John Kasich thinks anymore. But I think your point that the people who voted for him in 2016 are gone from the Republican Party is probably spot on. But this just seems like such a political cycle where everyone's been cast in a role. And once you know the role that John Kasich plays as MSNBC Republican, I think he loses a little bit of his gravitas, at least outside of Ohio.
But I'm not saying he's a national game changer. Yeah. But I think the phenomenon, I think he does make a difference in Ohio. The more broad question is not just Kasich, is it? It's the people who I thought, having spent months and months talking to him in 2016, the never Trumpers.
Yeah.
They've got their act together this time.
Yeah.
The Lincoln Project is the most effective social media. The point is Trump can't win with.
But I guess I'm not like, I'm sort of down on the Lincoln Project. I mean, if anything, I feel like the lesson of like the Obama years and up until the last cycle is that people who are willing to retweet they're not worth the same as people who are willing to get in their Trump flag. By the way, it's very strange that in American politics, people show their patriotism with a Trump flag and not an American flag. Maybe we should be concerned about that. But like, 100 retweets of the Lincoln Project to me is not worth like one person who's willing to like, sorry, it's not appropriate, but to like go counter demonstrate in Portland, Oregon or something like that. You know, like the commitment level to me, there's no comparison.
Well, I mean, they're both valid. I mean, I think they're different parts of the same picture. Like, absolutely, any physical campaigner you can get is an advantage. Right, as long as they're a good campaigner, and I think, look, on that front, the Democrats aren't going to struggle. Right, that's fine. But I think that the big picture in political betting, elections everywhere, is now social media. It is absolutely the memes on Facebook, and you know, again, go back to the Clinton thing. The Clinton campaign was rubbish. It didn't have a slogan. Stronger together. I bet. You ask 100 people what the Democrat slogan was in 2016, they won't remember. They had no social media. They were, you know, every video was like a really professionally put together attack on Donald Trump. That's all they were really doing, right? Or a load of pictures of Hillary being applauded by. And maybe they'll do that again. Maybe they are so
It
clueless.
seems like
they will do that again. So that's where the Lincoln Project is better. That's what I'm saying. Something like the Lincoln Project is actually effective, I think. Well,
on the social media point, I want to read another item we got in the mailbag. This is from Greg on the question of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Greg says Biden can say no to the progressives and nothing will change. They don't actually have power here. What are they going to do? Vote for Trump? The progressives' power in the party is regularly overrated by the media. That's why Biden won. The progressives are the most notable on Twitter, but their power is vastly overrated. So I guess given your thesis that social media is now really the center of the campaign, would you take issue with that line of reasoning that the progressives on Twitter are irrelevant, Biden can ignore them, or do you think that...
I would take issue with that. I'm not... I get the general point. Twitter is a bubble. That's a fact, right? And I absolutely get it that the progressives are overhyped, and they're more to the point. The Bernie Sanders supporters are overhyped, right? Because what's the difference?
Zeros.
Yeah, what's the difference between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, right? Politically, not that much. Yet one of them has the support of like 90% of Democrats or something, or approval, and the other one is a divisive figure with a load of divisive social media army behind him, who managed to start a fight every 5 minutes. But I wouldn't say that. I mean, as much as Bernie Sanders didn't win and isn't my idea of a good presidential candidate, he has changed the game a bit, hasn't he, in the Democrat Party? His emergence on social media in 2015.
Well, he's made Elizabeth Warren possible. Like I feel
absolutely.
Like she's funny. Sorry. She's like the dream girl that Democratic voters think is like too hot for them. It's like, well, we really want her, but like she's too good for us or something. I don't understand that, the way that her popularity is what it is, and yet she's been unsuccessful at.
Well, I mean, she got destroyed by the Bernie bros, didn't she? That's how I see what happened in the Democrat. He was cruising to victory. She was the obvious unity candidate in the party, and probably the strongest campaigner. And then Bernie's army went after her for a month, and that was that.
But I sort of blame her. I blame her a little bit. Like, I feel like if Barack Obama was like Michael Jordan and he was just the best, and like you just rated any part of his game and it was hard to come up with an argument why anyone was better than her or him, I feel like Warren like had trouble finding that second gear to take her from being Scottie Pippen to Michael Jordan. If you do America and basketball sports, like I like, this isn't what this podcast is about, but I just felt like she never responded with like a different way of speaking or presenting herself or talking. She just kind of became more and more and more and more heightened version of herself. And like maybe if she had one more campaign left in her, she would find that. But I felt like there was just something missing there on her part too.
Perhaps she did blow an incredibly strong position.
Yeah.
That was to me, that was the big shock of primary season.
We've had a conversation that in no way followed the script that Pratik and I planned for it, but that's great because you're a really smart guy and you have this like, I just really admire how disciplined and structured your thinking is. And sometimes those of you who listen to this podcast and read the Star-Spangled Gambler's blog know that I suffer from not having that. Now, but for the most part, we've been talking about how Trump's going to lose and where and why. My question to you is, let's say we're wrong. Where are you hedging this prediction? Are you hedging this prediction that Trump is going to lose this election, or are you not?
Well, so as we stand, I'm not even ahead. I'm not ahead at all. I'm slightly down. If I cashed out of Trump now, I'd be slightly down because he's down to 50. It's up to 50%.
Yeah.
I have no intention, as it stands, of getting rid of that outright position.
Uh-huh.
However, what I'd advise others to do, and what I may do in due course as part of a hedging, is the odds, the state odds, the odds cannot be correct as they stand, right?
Yeah.
We could all work out the path to victory, right, for Trump.
Yeah.
To me, Michigan is a big long shot, and I'm not betting on him winning there, right?
Yeah.
Wisconsin isn't dead. Florida isn't dead. I don't think he'll win.
So you're saying basically find a state that he has to win that's going to have cheaper odds than him winning, and then just build a position there if you get a little nervous.
Yeah, or back 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
I mean, this was because if you work it out, I mean, take Pennsylvania, right? I don't know about you, but I find it very hard to see him winning without Pennsylvania. Very hard. Florida, he's 44, 45.
Yeah.
No way he's winning without Florida. There's every chance that there is a very realistic chance that Biden wins Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, wins the presidency, and loses all those other swing states.
I'm gonna reach for my mouse right now and maybe put in a couple buy offers in Florida. I think that's very clever or brilliant. Is that how we're supposed to say it in the UK? I've actually never been to the UK. That's a brilliant idea. Monty, you want to say goodbye?
Yes, goodbye. Pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me on, guys. Pleasure talking to you. Enjoy the rest of the cycle.
And where can they find you? Where can they find the Political Gambler?
Politicalgambler.com and on Twitter at Paul Motti.
Pratik, you wanna blow a kiss to your fans?
No, thank you, Paul, for being on.
Monty, this was awesome. I'm sorry it took so long. I feel like I stand in your shadow, and maybe one day we can stand on your shoulders too. You're the man.
Do it again sometime. I'd love to. Good fun talking to you guys.
We'll get you on with Zoltar. You can get some right-wing conspiracy theories.
Me and Zoltar we've sparred on Twitter before. I know Zoltar.
He's a sparring type. All right, guys. This is Star Spangled Gamblers. Check out our blog and our website. Good night for now.